I want to share with you something that is a very, very personal subject for me. I knew a young girl and she struggled with chronic depression. She became depressed when she was 12 years old. And she started crying and she was sad all the time. Her parents tried to reason with her and tried to cajole her into giving up her sadness, into being happy about things, but there was just no soothing her. There was no helping her not be sad. There was no end to the crying. And that girl was me. And to my parents' credit, they really, really tried to reason with me and they tried to help me. But now I realize, looking back, they were way over their heads with what they were dealing with. And eventually, as a last resort, they punished me to try to stop me from crying and from carrying on. It didn't stop me from crying. It didn't stop me from being depressed. What it did was it made me learn to hide my sadness, to hide my depression. And I lived with chronic depression for more than 40 years. For more than 40 years, I struggled every day trying to mostly hide my depression. Sure, I went through some periods where I wasn't as depressed, and my depression was worsened by life events. Things like deaths in the family. That was mostly what really triggered me. My younger sister died because of a mistake that was made in a hospital, and that threw me into a tailspin when I was in my 30s that I wouldn't wish on anyone. So fast forward 40 years of trying to hide my depression, of being on and off antidepressants, numerous times of being in therapy or talking to social workers and shrinks and all of this, trying alternative methods like St. John's wort and exercise and all the things that were designed to help. And I actually, I mean, I wrote an article about this and I called it Mistake or Miracle, question mark, because it's actually both. I was able to disappear. I use the word disappear because I'm aware that depression is in my gene pool. It's just there. So I have to learn to manage it and keep it at bay, which I've done. But it was an accident. It was a complete accident. My husband was having terrible, terrible reaction and side effects from a statin that he had been put on because of his family history. And he'd been put on the megadose. He'd been on it for 7 years, and it pushed him to diabetes, prediabetes, which was also in his family. And it caused him cognitive difficulties and muscle weakness and a whole host of other nasty things. So we were in California at a wedding, actually, and he had a very bad episode. And when we came back, we said, we got to figure out what's going on. Well, Lipitor was the statin he was on. That was the only drug he was on. So he said, yeah, maybe we'll look into the side effects, potential side effects of Lipitor. Well, it turned out he was the poster child for side effects of Lipitor. So he said, okay, we got to get your sugar under control so you're not a full-blown diabetic. And we also have to get your cholesterol so it's in the normal range. So we dumped processed food, we dumped gluten, we dumped sugar, we dumped anything in a box. We got rid of, processed food just went. The chemicals out of there. So we got him normalized. But what happened with me was, and we didn't realize this for months later, maybe 6 months later, I wasn't depressed anymore. I wasn't depressed anymore. And when we finally realized this was when I was selling my family home. Both my parents had passed away, and it was time to sell the house. And I so did not want to do it. I so did not want to do it that we were both waiting for me to be a depressed mess, which is what happened. As I said, my depression got worse with events. And we were waiting for that to happen. It didn't happen. And that's not to say that I was cheerful and happy, because I wasn't, but I was appropriately sad. And if you've ever struggled with depression, you know that there is a huge, massive difference between being depressed and being appropriately sad. So that inspired me, encouraged me to write my book, Eat Your Blues Away, which chronicles my accidental recovery by changing how I eat. And it also was the inspiration for everything that I'm doing online. ThinStrongHealthy.com is my flagship blog. My mental attitude blog is MajorUpbeatMe.com. And I have a healthy eating club. It's called thehealthyeatingclub.com. That is my community of like-minded people who are learning to be and feel healthier by changing how they eat. And it's so much easier to do this when you have people who are cheering you on and who are guiding you. You can ask questions, you can get some direction. So I hope you'll check that out, thehealthyeatingclub.com. I'd also love it if you would subscribe to my YouTube. I am always posting recipes and how-tos there, and it's youtube.com/Cheryl A. Major. I use the A a lot because there are a lot of Cheryl Majors who knew I thought I was kind of unique, but don't know. So anyway, thank you for listening to this, and I would be so excited if you would join our community at thehealthyeatingclub.com. This is Cheryl A. Major with thehealthyeatingclub.com and thinstronghealthy.com and a whole bunch of other things. Signing off for now. Bye-bye.